David knows how to do this because he did all your revenue.
Welcome to Faith and Count. Wait. Welcome to Jerusalem. Don't do that. You make you starting to get very strange. Welcome to Faith and Count. This is class number 112. We are shooting live from Jerusalem.
Hi, how are you? Hello, everybody. Welcome to our class 111.
112.
112, sorry, straight from Jerusalem. Technologically, it's been challenging, but we hope we'll have a good class for you. So shalom and welcome.
And as a treat to be by live, there you have it. Yerushalayim. Off in the distance, you can see the dome of the Dome of the Rock, not the Dome of the Rock, but the other domes, the dome of the Purva Shul. You can see Yerushalayim. You can see a view around the different things. I'm sorry, the thing across the street is the UN. I'm interested in that. And then there's Mount Scopus over there, and Hebrew University right in the middle there, and Hadassah Hospital, and then looking off to the north over there. So we have a wraparound thing. We have a nice view, obviously, as you can tell from our apartment. So we're renting here in right out of Maladafna and Ramat Eshkol. Okay. And I think that's let me get back here. I think that's very fitting for the topic of the class tonight, because I'm going to talk at least about the spies and how they didn't want to go into the land of Israel. So here we are in the land of Israel, and we don't have to worry about the spies. This is this week's parsha. This week's parsha, not in Israel though. In Israel, they're already jumping onto their own Korach, but in the United States, we're on Shalach. So, and I think it's a good parsha for the discussion for today. And a good, meaningful inner psychological thing, because obviously the very simple meaning of the story is that they panicked, they freaked out. They thought it was just too hard and too difficult. Life was too challenging. And we all have those panic attacks and stresses, and we just say, it's too much for me. It's too much. So this class is about how to not look at things that way. And why did they look at it that way? And what was the cause of it? Because in a certain way, sometimes you're talking to somebody, right? And you're wondering, why are they reacting like this? You can get through it. But your friend, unfortunately, is not able to do that. And they're just really having a very hard time. So, and you can't really judge them, because that's their reality. You can't say, well, just do the right things, take a step forward, do what you're supposed to do, and you'll get through it. That doesn't work when you're really feeling a lot of terrible inner anxiety and stress. So, okay, so let's do the simple meaning, the simple outline of the story, and then let's take it step by step and see how that we can understand something from it. So the story was the right after the Jews had received the Torah, the first of the 40 years, they were supposed to go immediately into the land of Israel. God told them, you're going to go in, it's going to be great. And the flies came in. And then and close the window. It's a good thing the pigeon didn't fly in, let's put it that way, okay? You should be very upset about that, because how do we get the pigeon out? Even though we're on the 8th floor, but there are pigeons. Okay, so a little humor here. So anyway, Moses said, land's fine, you don't have to check it out. They said, no, we want to send spies. We really want to, make sure we know how to get in there. Moses didn't have a problem. He wanted to do it in a practical, realistic way. Then, I agree. And God says, if that's what you want, I'm not going to stop you. I'm telling you it's good, but go ahead, send spies. So Moses picked the best people he could do, 12 hand-picked spies. And they came back with this report saying that there's giants in the land, and the fruit is strange, the people are weird, we just can't go there. And I can't live in Israel. Strange people. Sorry. And giants, and it'll eat us up. It'll eat us up. And they said they brought back the fruit, and it was huge. Actually, I should get the dates out. They're huge. They're called anak. dates. They're like this big, and they're the most fantastic dates you ever had. Seeds, super nuts, it's fantastic. Anyway, so they brought that back saying it's wonderful stuff here you can find in Israel, but it's just like it's not for us. We just can't deal with this. It's for giant-sized people, and it'll eat us up, it'll consume us, and even menu. We not only are we not able to menu, it'll be greater than we're not able to take over it, but even God couldn't even help us in this situation, which is that's what the rabbis explained. Is they said menu, they already said it's it's a place that consumes. It's a hand, it means it's deep, and it's too much for God. Menu can be read two ways: too much for us and too much for him meaning God. So so what do we need to learn from this? I mean, the Jews get scared, they get terrified. What is the lesson for us? Every parsha, every Torah has to come and teach us a personal lesson, something that's relevant for us day to day, not just something theoretical, not just something in our head, but something about life and how we deal with life issues. So let me increase the question a little bit. The Jews, why would they get worried that this would be too hard for them to conquer? They had just been in Egypt. They had just been told by God, you're going into the land of Israel. We wiped out the superpower of that day, Egypt. 10 plagues, they were destroyed. What's going to be so hard with conquering the kings of Israel? God can do it. You saw it. You saw the splitting of the Yam Suf. You saw God at Har Sinai. You know that there's nothing that can stop it when he wants something. He's saying that you're going there. This doesn't really seem like the generation that we really should have those kind of doubts. And not only that, but if they have that problem, when they were living with God, us, 2,000-3,000 years later, who have not seen the miracles, have not had the divine presence, what hope is it for us? So it seems like, if they can't do it, we're even in more trouble than they are. So it's a question of if really about anybody who could withstand it. So how can that be? How can it be that they had these problems? And these, as I said, these were handpicked people by Moses. They were supposed to be able to be the strong ones, and they seemed to be also having the problem. They had the problem most because they scared everybody else. With their fear, they had infected everyone else. So these are the questions that the Lubavitcher Rebbe asks. And then he says, I don't understand. There were 12 spies sent. 2 of them came back with a different report. That was Yeshua and Caleb. So Yeshua and Caleb, they said something slightly different. They said, no, it won't eat us up. Instead, we will consume them. We will consume the land. So the heart of the problem that the Rebbe says is because this was not a problem of people just getting scared. These were people who were deeply involved in the Jewish mission. They liked Torah, they liked learning, they liked in the desert. And in the desert, in the wilderness, they saw God's hand openly. They saw how God provided for them every day. Food fell from the heavens. They knew there were miracles every day. They knew God was around. And they said, that's great. But when we go into the land of Israel, it won't be like here because God is asking us to live a normal life. So when you're wrapped in holiness, when you're sitting and learning Torah all day at Har Sinai, when you're removed from the world, when you're sitting in yeshiva, you're sitting in a holy city, when you're sitting in a beautiful place and everything is provided for you, there you can be a real Jew. But the Jew in day-to-day life, working for some business like IBM or AT&T and having a non-Jewish boss and having to go shopping and having to go cleaning and having to deal with doctors and insurance policies and car mechanics and other kinds of stuff. But that's what you do when you live in a land. You have to have policemen and you have to have car mechanics and you have to have gas stations and so forth. And so there, it's impossible to be Jewish. So they weren't saying, we're scared about it physically going in. We're saying it's going to destroy us spiritually. We're going to destroy who we are as Jews because we'll have to give up. We'll have to compromise. We'll fall down. We won't be so. So they weren't making an argument from the argument. Their argument was the one of from a certain perspective of where God can be revealed. Is God only in heavenly, holy, spiritual prayer and other kinds of learning and that kind of stuff? Or can God actually be also accessed and also realized when you're just living your day-to-day life and you're standing in the supermarket and the line's not moving? Is that godliness? Is that Jewish? Am I in any way more Jewish? So Caleb and Yeshua said, absolutely. That's the whole point. The whole point of holidays, the whole point of Judaism, the whole point of learning is to be able to have an inspiring moment, to be able to take that and then to take it and bring it into a normal day-to-day experience, a normal day-to-day stuff, to take and you could say spiritualize the simple material day-to-day life. And that was their problem. And it's a problem I can see here. I go in Yerushalayim and I see a lot of people have this problem. They try and do as most to remove themselves from the world, to go off into some holy cocoon and to sit in their little community and stuff like that, which is very nice and very holy and very good and so forth. But that's not why the soul came down into this world. That's not why we're here. That's not why we were sent here. You could have done better in heaven if that was the case, because there's more godliness that can be accessed here in this physical world. Because when a person transforms a normal material situation, when a person takes care of somebody else, when a person goes to the hospital and does an act of kindness for them, when a person goes and shops for the other person, when a person gives them some sort of advice in terms of dealing with their life and everything else, that is really where godliness is most revealed, because the other kind of godliness was already there. God provided it. But when a person takes and transforms a normal day-to-day situation into godliness, they can actually do a revealing, and you're bringing out a hidden godliness which wasn't normally there, and that godliness can overtake anything. So this is the idea. We get these panic attacks. We think that it's too much for us, and what God is saying is, no, you're my agent. I want you to accomplish for things. I'm giving you this as an opportunity. I'm giving you this as a challenge. I know you see it as a challenge. I know you think it's hard, and I know you're getting scared about it. But you know what? I'm with you. I'm going to help you. I'm with the spot. I'm with you. I'm going to help you. You're going to be able to conquer the land, and you're going to be able to do very good and so forth. And you're going to be able to bring Mashiach, and you're able to transform the whole world into a place of Kedusha. That, in a nutshell, is the lesson from this week's Parsha. And hopefully that is a good lesson that everyone can take. And next week, I hope, we'll be outside. Maybe we'll do it live from the Western Wall. I don't know. My wife is thinking about it. If this works out, I hope that the sound is clear. You give me some feedback and tell me how this worked and whether you heard me clearly, you could see me clearly. And now I'm going to turn over the camera to my dearest wife. Whoa, 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 whoa. I caught her off guard. All right. So meantime, Suri and Amy and everyone, you can just feed back your questions to me, and we'll see how it goes. Okay. I like the interaction with the class. I don't like it.
Okay, yes, go Shimon. You're on the line. Okay, good. So I don't even know where to look on this little machine. I'll try and look at whatever I think is the camera. Anyway, thank you for coming, for everybody for tuning in. And here we are in Yerushalayim. And I don't know what I did to be so privileged to be here. It's quite something. So what I want to talk about is I want to talk maybe this week and maybe a little bit more next week about the concept of intimacy. And yes, is there a book that I can prop this up with? Because this is too low for me.
What?
Is there a book I can prop this up with? This is too low for me. Can you get me something?
Closest that I've got is the human foil.
Okay, so give me the aluminum foil. Thank you. So okay, that's fine. Okay, yeah. So anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about the concept of intimacy, and the topic for today is that intimacy begins with knowing who you are. Intimacy has a lot to do with the other person that you're trying to create intimacy with, but intimacy begins with knowing who you are. So I want to tell you a little bit about my entry into Israel. First of all, you guys know I love my life. I love my life in America. I love my life. I love what I do. I love pretty much everything about it. And I feel that I know who I am, and that I'm walking on solid ground, and I know where I am, and I know where I'm going. And I think that's all that is true. But a person a person, we all live extremely busy lives. And as much of an expert as we think we are about ourselves, we'd be surprised at the parts of ourselves that we don't really know well. And I got a glimpse of a part of myself that I didn't really know well the minute we got to Israel. And what happened? What happened? We landed. We had a wonderful flight. It was such a, I saw Hashem's kindness the whole way. We had, in these times of post-COVID, people are still conservative about, they're still a little conscious, especially in a crowded thing like a plane, 11 hours in the company of a lot of other people, and there's, whatever. And it was so nice. We were on a small, brand new plane. And Hashem and I had 2 seats to ourselves. The aisle seats were only two across. It was such an incredible thing. And I actually got a few hours of sleep, shockingly, on the plane. And we landed. And the people that we principally came to see, this young couple that we principally came to see, it was such a surprise. We didn't expect it. They greeted us at the airport. It was so nice. And then we went out of the airport doors. And as soon as I saw the land of Israel, as soon as I saw the vegetation of Israel, as soon as I saw the sky and the road and the pavement and the asphalt, I started crying like I started crying like a baby, just crying, and I couldn't stop. And what was the feeling? The closest way I can describe the feeling is if a child is separated from a parent for a very, very long time, and then all of a sudden, let's say it's a child is separated from its mother for a very, very, very long time, and then all of a sudden, there's the parent again. What's the child going to do? The child is going to start crying. You think the logical reaction would be the person would be like so happy, and believe me, I was happy. I was extremely happy, but it was the bittersweet feeling of, oh, mommy, you're here. Like, oh, I missed you so much. And it's much more accessible in Eretz Israel. That's what's written in all of our literature. Hashem the eyes of Hashem are on Israel 24/7. They're on the whole world 24/7, but it's a different thing in Israel. And my neshama all of a sudden felt, mommy. It felt Hashem and the pain of like the excitement of being with Hashem and in a much closer way than I normally. Okay, so I'm going to continue where we left off. And anyway, the next morning I began to pray to God, in my usual morning prayer. And it was not the same as praying at home. It was just not the same. I was in my our little penthouse apartment penthouse studio overlooking Jerusalem, in Jerusalem, overlooking the Har Habayis, overlooking everything. And it was totally a different experience. So it was totally a different experience. And so anyway, it pays to get to know yourself. It pays to get to know Hashem. I'm going to lead off the next part that I was going to talk about because I'm going to talk about it some other time. But I want to skip straight to a story about knowing yourself. This story took place a while ago. It took place probably in either probably the 1970s or the 1980s. And it's a very famous story. Maybe somebody has heard it before. It's a story told by Rabbi Chaim Gutnick, who is an extremely famous rabbi in Australia, and a Chabadnik. And he said that, so he describes that there was, he's a famous rabbi in Melbourne, Australia. And there was a family, a very wealthy family, a non-Jewish family, in a place near Melbourne called Ballarat. And this family was a father, a mother, and a daughter. They were Catholic, and they, they had a normal life. And the daughter was an older teenager, and she, like most older teenagers who were Catholic in that area, she attended every Sunday. She went to she visited the local convent, and the local Catholic convent. And one day she was in the town library and she came across a book. And this book contained awful pictures. It contained pictures of all these thousands, hundreds and thousands of emaciated people who were suffering terribly. These were pictures of the Jews in the Holocaust. And she read chapter after chapter, and she looked at the book and she was possessed. She never saw anything like it in her life. She never imagined, she asked herself, could human beings possibly be so brutal to people? And she started to read everything she could about the Holocaust, and she became more and more obsessed by it. And she started thinking about the Jewish people day and night, and thinking about what they'd gone through, and the anguish that she felt, and also the closeness that she felt to these victims was really something. So her parents noticed a change in her, and they brought her to a shrink. They brought her to a psychiatrist, and he talked to her, and he told the family, this is a very strange mental illness. I don't think there's any medicine that is going to help your daughter. This is a very, very, very strange mental illness. And so they brought her home. She continued to languish and be obsessed by this thing. Finally, she was reading a newspaper one day, and she saw an article about a man named the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and in this article, it said that he was the leader of Jewry at that moment. And she decides, I'm going to write a letter to him. And she wrote a letter to him all about her anguish over the Holocaust and her feelings of sympathy for the Jewish people. And she got a letter back not long afterwards from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, talk to Rabbi Chaim Gutnick. Now, at that point, Rabbi Chaim Gutnick was a very famous person in Australia. And so she knew some Orthodox Jewish girls. And she asked about him, and she quickly got his name, number, address, the whole 9 yards. She showed up at his house. She knocked on his door, and then she thought, what am I doing? I'm a Catholic girl. Is he even going to let me in the house? What is he going to think? Is he even going to talk to me? She didn't know anything about Orthodox Jews. And she opened the door, and the person who answered said yes. She said, I'm looking for Rabbi Chaim Gutnick. He said, that's me, you can come in. And so she came in, and she poured out her story, and she showed the letter from the Rebbe saying that she should go to Rabbi Chaim Gutnick. So Rabbi Gutnick thought, what I'm going to do? So he asked her some questions about her family, her parents, where her parents came from, and he couldn't find anything that would enlighten him at all about this girl's strange obsession with the Jewish people. So, he sends her home without really helping her. And she starts getting even more, starts getting worse. And she starts getting worse. And after a little while, Chaim Gutnick gets a letter from the Rebbe about an entirely different topic. And as a PS on the bottom, as a postscript on the bottom, the Rebbe said, by the way, what's doing with the Jewish girl from Ballarat? And Chaim Gutnick looks at the postscript. He said, the Jewish girl from Ballarat. He calls up a colleague of his, Rabbi Sarabransky. And Rabbi Sarabransky is the head of the yeshiva, the Lubavitch yeshiva in Melbourne. And he says, you have to come with me there's this, and he explains the situation. I have to go talk to the family. And Rabbi Sarabronsky said, wait a minute, you want me, an old Jewish rabbi, you want me to go talk to a Catholic girl? What do you want from me? What do you expect from me? And then Rabbi Gutnick said, listen to what the Rebbe wrote to me. The Rebbe said, what is doing with the Jewish girl from Ballarat? And so Rabbi Sarabronsky said, okay, no, you don't have to say any more. And they both went to the house. They knocked on the door. The parents were surprised and pleased to see them. And they told them what the Rebbe wrote. And the couple shook their heads in shock. And they said, we're Catholic. There's nothing, we don't have any connection to the Jewish people. This is our daughter. We don't know anything about this. We don't know what to tell you. And so Rabbi Gutnick and Rabbi Sarabronsky left bewildered. Then Rabbi Gutnick was so disturbed from the letter from the Rebbe that he couldn't let the issue go, and he kept in touch, and he wanted to find out what's happening with the girl. And after a while, he heard she got so bad that she was hospitalized. And not only was she hospitalized, but they thought she only had a limited number of days to live. Her condition was just nosediving. And so is that the point? Anyway, he went to the hospital, and he confronted the parents, and he said, he confronted the parents, and he confronted the parents, and he's just looking at them. And all of a sudden, the mother says to him, can I speak to you privately? And he knew, Rabbi Gutnick knew, this is the moment I was waiting for. The mother takes him out of the room, speaks to the rabbi privately, and says, I grew up in a Jewish home in London. I'm perfectly Jewish. And I ran away from home, and I ran away from everything that I'm familiar with, and I didn't want any part of my family. And I ran to Australia, and I forgot my past. And I married a Catholic, and I'm fully, and he doesn't know a thing about my past. I never told anybody. She said, but if my daughter wants to grow up as a Jew, I'm not going to stop her. And so Rabbi Gutnick said, let's go, let's tell her. And she said, but my husband, I don't know how in the world I'm going to tell this to my husband. Rabbi Gutnick said, don't worry about this. I will take care of it. And Rabbi Gutnick, they'd go back into the hospital room. Rabbi Gutnick tells the father, I need to speak to you. The father leaves, the mother goes in, and she's alone with the girl. And And he tells the father everything, and they go back into the room. As they go back into the room, the daughter's off the bed. The daughter's already packing her suitcase. The daughter has a huge smile on her face. And she said, Father, I feel wonderful. I feel wonderful. Anyway, Rabbi Gutnick continued to help her. He put her in touch with a Jewish school in Melbourne. She became a fully observant Jew. She married a Jew, and the story was written a long time ago, but she sent her children to the Lubavitcher Yeshiva in Melbourne. So a person, without knowing who they are, on a very deep level, a person languishes. A person can't, if you run away from yourself, if you run away from who you are, a person languishes. I remember that, I grew up Jewish, and I knew I was Jewish. I was a child of Holocaust survivors. But a person, even if they're conscious or not conscious, we search for that deeper part of ourselves. And there's constantly deeper and deeper parts of ourselves. And I remember when I was young, before I was searching. I was always searching, and I felt that there was a secret to life that people were not telling me. And I started looking for people who knew the secret to life, and I couldn't find them. And I remember that I also, I became, this is very big with Jews. I was fascinated with travel. Why? Because I was looking for me. I was looking for something. I knew I was searching for something. I was really searching for myself. I was searching for Hashem, and I was searching for who I really was. And interestingly enough, after I literally stumbled on Orthodox Jews, and after I came to oh my gosh, no, it's them. They're the ones who are living life the right way. Believe me, it took me a long time to overcome all my prejudices. And but an interesting thing happened. We'll skip to the end. An interesting thing happened. I completely lost my wanderlust. I have, I'm in Israel now, and I'm in Israel with a purpose. But my desire to travel for travel's sake completely left me because I had found me. I had found Hashem. A very deep part of me is Hashem. I have Hashem in my core. And when I found my core, so many other things got quieter. So anyway, it's a lifelong journey. I've been an observant Jew for more than 30 years. But even so, it's a lifelong journey because there are deeper and deeper levels of ourselves that we have to find. So I want to wish you all a good week. And we look forward very much to seeing you next week, also from Yerushalayim. Be well. Thank you so much. Eskel Shimon, you need to turn it off. You need to turn it off because I don't know. Huh?